Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. Thank you for joining me here today. We're here today to announce a settlement agreement with Morgan Stanley and to talk about what this agreement means for thousands of families all across the state of New York. I'm very happy to be joined at this announcement by some of our state's great housing champions, Thomas Roach, the mayor of White Plains and the first vice president of the New York Conference of Mayors, Madeline Fletcher, the executive director of the Newburgh Community Land Bank, and Christy Peel, the executive director of the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, one of our anchor partners in our homeowner protection program, our network of legal services and housing counseling. Also with us today are three members of my team who have worked very, very hard to bring this and other deals to fruition and to help New Yorkers recover from the housing crisis. Steve Glassman, our Senior Enforcement Counsel for Economic Justice, Dina Levy, Special Assistant to the Attorney General for Housing and Development, back there, and Assistant Attorney General Tanya Tracht, who really was our lead lawyer on this matter and led the whole investigation. So it's good to be here with all of you, and I'm pleased that 4 years after we first started up our federal state residential mortgage-backed securities working group, which I co-chair, that we're able to announce another settlement. This is a $3.2 billion settlement with Morgan Stanley relating to the bank's deceptive practices that contributed to the crash of the housing market in 2008. Of that, New York families and communities will receive $550 million in cash and consumer relief. As this is structured similarly to the deals we have done with J.P. Morgan Chase, Citibank, and Bank of America, but it has a few important additions. We get smarter about this as we go along. But this does represent a significant milestone for the Mortgage-Backed Securities Working Group, and I'll discuss that a little more later. It's a guiding principle in our office that we seek equal justice under law. We seek to enforce the rules. We seek to hold people accountable. And our focus in this area really relates to the harm done, the damage done by banks, including Morgan Stanley, that created, packaged, and sold bad mortgage-backed securities with mortgages that they knew or should have known were going to fail, and drained trillions of dollars in wealth from homeowners, nearly destroying the American middle class. I want to talk more specifically about the relief provided in this deal, but it's important to take a step back and to see how far we have come. In 2011, I was the first and for a time the only state attorney general that refused to sign on to a proposed bad deal that was going to supposedly resolve all state and federal claims against the banks whose reckless misconduct brought down the market. And I announced that I wasn't going to join on to the deal in March of 2011. Then other attorneys general, starting with my late very good friend Beau Biden, joined me, and the support just built for demanding a full investigation and more relief than was on the table. And as a result, President Obama, in his 2012 State of the Union address, appointed me co-chair of an unprecedented federal-state working group to investigate this misconduct and recover money for the communities across the country that were still reeling from the crash. And communities all over the country to this day have not gotten back to where they were prior to the crash. All told, the settlements achieved by the working group have totaled almost $65 billion, with well over $4 billion coming to New York families and communities. From day one, my priority has been trying to help the people who are hurt and trying to help the communities that were devastated. So we have gotten money. There's $150 million here in cash, and the rest is in, as with the other deals, a menu of consumer relief. Because getting money is not enough. You have to make sure that it actually, to we can, it goes into successful programs to help people and to help communities that have been suffering. So in this deal, there is money for principal reductions for families who are still facing foreclosure. So there are going to be a lot of New York families that can get their loans written down and make their mortgages affordable under the terms of this deal. There are also resources to build and preserve affordable rental housing, multifamily affordable housing, critical need for families that actually lost their homes during the crash. And the settlement is going to provide funds for our partners in local government, for municipalities struggling with the plague of abandoned and decaying properties. Mayors and housing advocates, and you'll hear from some of them in a moment, mayors and housing advocates across the state have been talking to us about the problems they face, particularly with zombie properties, which are properties where the foreclosure proceeding has begun but is not yet concluded, and the family has abandoned the home. These are empty homes, and banks have not been maintaining them. They fall into disrepair. They're havens for crime and vandalism. They bring down property values. They hurt all of the neighboring properties. And we have tried to be responsive to that. This settlement is going to expand the ability of local governments to do code enforcement, maintaining properties that are decaying. It also gives communities additional funds beyond what we've already provided in earlier settlements to invest in land banks that are rebuilding entire neighborhoods block by block. So we have made a lot of progress, but we forget at our peril. We forget at our peril how bad the crash was. And when I took office as Attorney General, there were 345,000 New York families facing foreclosure. And I quickly learned that about half of them had never had a chance to talk to a lawyer or housing counselor at any stage of the process. American homeowners lost $7.4 trillion in home equity in 2008. And the focus that we adopted very early was to try and get money where it would be most effective in helping the people and families and communities who are still suffering in 2011. The first step was to set up the Homeowner Protection Program, or HOP, which is a network of legal services providers and housing counselors, and you'll hear from one of our anchor partners in that network in a moment, but we now are funding almost 90 different legal services and housing counseling agencies across the state to help New Yorkers stay in their homes. The network has already helped more than 55,000 New York families, and I've made a commitment that I intend to keep as long as I'm Attorney General. No one in New York will be foreclosed on because they can't get to a lawyer. And while the impact of the HOP program was immediately felt, we soon realized that for some families, there were barriers that legal work couldn't solve by themselves. We discovered that a lot of families didn't qualify for mortgage modifications because they had a little bit of outstanding debt. People lost their jobs, had some medical debt, had a lien due to prior housing loan. And so we created, and through the HOP network, have been providing small loans through the Mortgage Assistance Program, or MAP, that helps families pay off these debts, and then the loan is repaid essentially as the equivalent of a second mortgage. MAP loans have helped a lot of families to switch to mortgages with sustainable payments. The only people eligible for loans are folks who will then qualify and be able to save their home. We've approved already more than $17 million in loans, and we're very pleased with the fact that program is going to continue to expand. We've also, dealing with the issue of zombie properties, worked with the banks to create new protocols to improve their response to complaints from local governments that are dealing with zombies, to escalate the dialogue. And I hope that we're hoping that all of our colleagues are taking advantage of that, should it be necessary. The protocols have been successful in resolving problems, but we know we need to take another step. And this year, we're hopeful that we'll pass legislation in Albany, which I introduced last year, to help provide municipalities with the ability to handle zombie properties, creating a statewide registry to track zombies and ensure that banks take responsibility for them more quickly after they're abandoned. As to land banks, we've already invested $33 million in 10 nonprofit land banks from Niagara Falls to Suffolk County. They are working to return vacant properties to productive use and helping revive communities. And the land bank program, which really didn't get going until late 2013, has just been building and building. Syracuse has one of our more successful land banks. They have already acquired more than 900 properties, which in a city the size of Syracuse is very significant, that will either be rehabilitated or torn down. And today, our support for code enforcement and land banks is being expanded significantly due to the resources provided in the Morgan Stanley settlement. We are looking forward to helping our colleagues in local government rebuild their communities and help families have secure, safe, affordable housing. No New Yorker should ever lose their home because they can't find a lawyer or they have a small debt that stands between them and a mortgage modification. No community should have to suffer through a plague of abandoned, dilapidated properties, bringing down property values, hurting the tax base, and serving as havens for crime and vandalism. No New York family should lose tens of thousands of dollars in their home's value just because an abandoned property is next door. So we're committed to this process. We are using what we think are the best models for community redevelopment, things that have been used in Detroit and other places where there's a lot of study on this. We continue to fight to keep New York families in their homes and to help all New York communities finally put the collapse of the housing market behind them and to really fulfill the vision that we started out with when we started the working group, which was a commitment to recoup and direct some of the resources of the banks into communities that were still suffering. So, and to do a moment for something in Spanish, hemos logrado un acuerdo con Morgan Stanley por más de $3,000 millones sobre las malas prácticas del banco. Las familias y comunidades de Nueva York recibirán más de 500 millones. Seguiremos haciendo rendir cuenta a los bancos por su mala conducta. And now I would like to introduce a great partner in community revitalization, a man who's seen the effects of the housing crisis up close and been a leader in efforts to resolve it, White Plains Mayor Thomas Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. It's my pleasure to be with you all here today on this day where we have a lot of good news. I want to start out by thanking the Attorney General for his efforts in this regard, as well as the attorneys and investigators who did the hard work, which is not glamorous work, to bring justice. This, as an attorney for 27 years myself, the system is designed to bring justice, and it doesn't always function as well as it could, but this is an example of it functioning properly, in my opinion. In addition to being mayor of the city of White Plains, I am vice president of the New York Conference of Mayors. I'm here on behalf of my colleagues throughout the state who have been dealing for years with the residue and the damage inflicted by the financial crisis, the financial meltdown. Different cities have been impacted in different ways, but I am very pleased, and I know the mayors are pleased. We were just up at our legislative meeting in Albany earlier this week, and one of the issues that was raised with me by many mayors was, will any of this settlement money be used to address the damage created by the conduct? And talk about quick turnaround. By the end of the week, here we are. I know that everyone is very pleased with that. Some of the things that we're talking about today, like land banks, don't apply everywhere. For example, in White Plains, we don't have an issue where the large numbers of properties are simply walked away from. But in areas where that happens, the land banks offer an opportunity to consolidate parcels and make them more valuable, to in some cases do some work on the parcel to make it more saleable, and also take it out of the auction process. In the auction process, speculators can buy them and then, okay, they pay the taxes, but they don't do anything to upgrade the home. Other issues that are being addressed here include code enforcement funding, which is essential. So you have neighborhoods where people are working hard to maintain their homes, and if someone isn't maintaining their home, particularly if a home is in foreclosure, it impacts the value of the homes around it and the quality of life of the people that live there. And that's something that we struggle with and we work very hard on. This funding will be a great help in that regard. Also, the funding for affordable housing. The City of White Plains views affordable housing as essential to the quality of life in our community. We want people of every economic level to live in our city, and it is very difficult to achieve. We have 10% requirements in our downtown and new construction, but we're always looking for ways to enhance and to get more affordable housing in the mix. And the funds that are being talked about here today will be very helpful in that regard. So I want to once again thank the Attorney General and everyone who worked so hard on this. The damage is still being felt. Homeowners are still struggling. In White Plains, we fund and counselors to help people, because the number one thing you can do with all of this is to keep the homeowner in the home. If you do that, you eliminate, we deal with then the cause rather than the symptom. So this is helpful in that regard too. So it's an honor for me to be here to participate in this and to thank everyone who was involved.
Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Madeline Fletcher, who actually is the executive director of one of our land banks, the Newburgh Community Land Bank.
Thanks. Hi, thank you for having me on behalf of my organization and the other land banks, the other 12 land banks across New York State. it's not just homeowners who are affected by this mortgage crisis. It's been neighbors, whole blocks, and entire communities. In Newburgh, a small city of 30,000, whole blocks in our historic downtown have vacancy rates in excess of 50%. But because of the funds provided by Attorney General Schneiderman, my organization, the Newburgh Community Land Bank, and other land banks across the state have started to address this issue. Thousands of dollars in property tax revenue have been returned to the cities, particularly in Newburgh. We've restored multiple historic properties to productive use, and in just a 5-block area in our downtown, we've laid the groundwork for the rehabilitation of abandoned historic buildings to turn them into almost 100 units of affordable, high-quality apartments and dozens of homeownership opportunities. For example, on South Miller Street, a block with high vacancy rates and very few remaining homeowners, which at one point was a very stable owner-occupied block, the Land Bank is partnering with Habitat for Humanity to rebuild homeownership housing. And the other day, I was talking to Habitat's terrific volunteer coordinator, and he told me that since they've started work, hardly a day has passed where one of South Miller Street's homeowners hasn't brought coffee or snacks or just stopped to talk about their block and what their block used to be like and their vision for what their block may be. And I think it's these informal interactions that are sort of the building blocks of a revitalized community. And additional funding will allow us to expand on our work, building housing, building community, creating jobs, and supporting economic development in more neighborhoods that continue to suffer in the wake of the foreclosure crisis. We are so encouraged by and so thankful to Attorney General Schneiderman for his continued commitment to our work. This funding is a transformative lifeline for Newburgh and for other land banks throughout the state. So we're very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we're going to hear from Christy Peel, who is the Executive Director of the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, one of our anchor partners in the Homeowner Protection Program.
Thank you, Attorney General Schneiderman. Congratulations on this great settlement, and on behalf of New York State and New York State's families. I just need to really acknowledge the AG and your amazing staff for your leadership and tenacity in these settlements. We know that you've really pushed it to the bottom of the line to get everything for New York families. So we're incredibly grateful. Our work through the Homeowner Protection Program lets us see day in and day out all the families who have been positively impacted by all the resources that you've delivered to New York State. Tens of thousands of homeowners who have been able to get help in saving their homes. And we're really appreciative of the fact that you've taken a holistic and innovative approach. When we look at some of the other states across the country, many of those who did not receive funding from TARP through the hardest hit funds, we know that we're in much better shape. So the AG talked a little bit about where homeowners were in foreclosure at 5 years ago. I mentioned around 300,000 families. There's still many families who are struggling, even though we've been able to really get through probably 2/3 of that backlog. So we're really proud of our partnership in helping all those folks, but we know that there's a lot more that we need to do, and we're grateful particularly for the focus on consumer relief. We know through our work with our network, and this is backed up through national stats, that principal reduction is the best way to get a sustainable modification and to keep a homeowner in their home. So the fact that there's that tremendous amount of focus, not only through the consumer part of the menu, but also innovating with helping municipalities buy distressed notes is incredibly helpful. So we're really grateful for the fact that we've come so far in the past 4 years, but we're really grateful that we have new resources to continue to push and help all the homeowners who continue to struggle. So
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. This settlement, to wrap up, again, this is the fourth major institution. The Justice Department is announcing the federal side of it today as well. So we have resolved the claims of New York and of a variety of federal agencies, and I think the state of Illinois is also settling today. The focus of our working group continues to be investigating and pursuing financial institutions that contributed to the crash and working as smartly as we can to try and see that resources are directed from those institutions to help the communities that are still suffering. I'm pleased with the success we had. I'm proud of the fact that New York has led the way on this, but our work is far from done. And I look forward to working with all of our colleagues and continuing to get their feedback and input, which helps us be smarter with each deal we negotiate. I think some of you were here for J.P. Morgan Chase, Citibank, and Bank of America. This is another really very, very important step, another very important joint federal-state settlement that has come out of this working group that wouldn't have existed 5 years ago and exists because of a lot of good work of people here. Thank you very much.
Take some questions, starting with today's announcement.
Can you explain exactly how the monies are going to be distributed and how the people that were affected by this immobiliary crisis are going to be benefited from it?
Sure. There is, as with previous deals, there's a menu of consumer relief and there's cash relief. And the $150 million goes to the state. It goes to the general fund for programs that are already underway. And as you probably are aware, there's a lot of attention on housing and the need for affordable housing in Albany right now. And so we're optimistic about that money being able to contribute. Then we have a menu of consumer relief, which totals $400 million in credits, which includes $70 million of principal reduction, which is a lot of principal reduction. And a lot of people's loans can get written down with $70 million. There are minimums of $30 million for land banks and code enforcement, and we expect those numbers to actually be higher. There's some flexibility. The bank has some flexibility to put more or less money in depending on how easy it is to spend it quickly. In all these deals, the banks are given an incentive to move the money out the door quickly, and the funding for below market rate lending for multifamily affordable housing, as was noted, will enable us to do some things that we've already seen in the Bank of America and Citi settlements. I think that there were more than 30 projects already underway around the state to construct multifamily affordable housing. So those are the basic categories. And the homeowner protection program is working. The MAP program and the land banks are working. This is work that is just growing because we really didn't start doing anything in this area until the relief started to come in late 2012. And most of these programs it was really 2014 was the first year where they were all clicking along. We are looking to expand the number of land banks. There still is authorization for more land banks, and we'll continue to pursue this. And within the next couple of months, we'll probably have some more announcements connected to that.
How are you finding working with the federal officials in the working group on this compared to when this initiative began several years ago?
We continue to get remarkable results. I mean, the first settlement with J.P. Morgan Chase was the largest settlement at that time in American history. It was topped by the Bank of America settlement, and we have a good working relationship. I take a pretty aggressive approach to these things, and we're New Yorkers, so we tend to be a little more impatient with things than some others. But the results speak for themselves. I mean, this has provided a lot of relief to a lot of people all over America, and I'm proud of the fact that in New York we've taken a more creative approach and really better advantage of it than any other state, I believe, and have more expansive housing counseling, legal services, land bank programs than anybody else as a result of these settlements.
Identify yourself and where you're from. Kevin Dugan from New York Post. You mentioned that there were a few important additions from the JPM's Citi and Bank of America settlements. Can you talk about what is working best? What's getting the bank to the buck, and what you jettisoned so far?
Yeah, there has been an evolution, and it really reflects our learning and our colleagues in local government, in legal services, and the people who are working in the land banks have been giving us feedback as we've gone. So, as I indicated, the first thing I was focused on really was keeping people in their homes and getting legal services and housing counseling, because the mayor noted this. Foreclosures hurt families, and they hurt entire communities. People lose their jobs, kids are pulled out of school. It's if you can prevent a foreclosure and keep a family in their home, it's tremendous benefit it has a ripple effect beyond that family. So we started in the J.P. Morgan Chase deal. The focus really was funding for legal services and housing counseling. We then found that even though there were lots of mortgage modification programs available and banks were required under some of our deals to offer principal reductions under certain circumstances, a lot of people were being excluded from them because they had these small liens or debts that prevented them from qualifying for either federal programs or programs the banks were offering as a part of the settlement to write down loans and keep people in their homes. We started the mortgage assistance program. That has been successful in enabling people to close that gap and qualify. We recognize that individual homeowners were not the only victims, that if you were on a street and you saved your home, but there were abandoned properties on your street, you were also a victim. And that's when we started, we looked to the model in models that were used in Michigan and started land banks. Land banks were authorized by legislation in 2010, but there was no, this happens in Albany sometimes, there was no funding. So there were some land banks that were started up, but we started offering funding, and now there are 10 land banks up and operating, renovating houses, sometimes tearing them down and deeding the plot to the home next door so it gets back on the tax rolls. And it's been incredible to watch that go. The final thing that we came up with was we realized that because we were getting so many mortgage modifications and these were available, that a bunch of scammers were starting phony mortgage modification programs. And it's one of the great moments in my career was when I was driving and I heard on the radio some announcement that all 50 of the state attorneys general have settled the claims of the bank. Your mortgage may have already been written down. Call this law firm. So I called that law firm, and they're no longer scamming people with phony modification scams. And we then created an app so people can check any program offering a modification to see if it's registered with HUD or registered with our office to see if it's legit or not. And they can report scams when they happen. So it's been an evolving process. We have a lot of really creative people here in the office who are thinking about this. We get input from experts in law, housing development all the time. And I am confident that we have much more robust programs in New York arising out of these settlements than any other state.
Anything else on this? Any
Okay.
other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.